Every act of service has a story. Every story has the power to inspire. In a world that is always rushing forward, we pause to listen, to learn, and to lead with purpose. Here, conversations go beyond words. They ignite compassion, leadership, and change. This is True Rotarian, where service meets storytelling. I am Hemant Bhasin. Thank you for being part of this journey. Let's begin. Today, we celebrate a remarkable Indian artist who has taken the ancient classical art of Kuchipudi across continents and into a global culture mainstream. Arunima is an award-winning dancer, educator, choreographer, and a cultural leader with more than 3,000 performances across 50 countries and over 40 major international awards and recognitions. Ladies and gentlemen, her work is recognized at Buckingham Palace, 10 Downing Street, the House of Lords, Rashtrapati Bhavan, at prestigious festivals, museums, cultures, and institutions across Europe, UK, and India. As a founder and artistic director of Arunima Kumar Dance Company, he leads one of the world's largest Kuchipudi institutions with students across UK, Europe, India. Beyond performance, her work in education, community, and well-being has taken classical dance into prisons, blind orchestras, disability centers, care homes, hospitals, youth institutions, proving that art heals and empowers and transforms lives. Arunima, it is indeed my pleasure to have you on our show. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It is such an honor, and it's a remarkable opportunity, and I'm so happy. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I must share one secret with you. I have known Arunima when she was probably 8-9 years old. Am I right?
Yes.
And my sister and my brother-in-law, they were the neighbors, and the most decorated police officer I have ever known in my life, Mr. Neeraj Kumar, was staying next door, and Arunima, since that time, used to call me as Hemant Mamu.
Yes. So it is very, very difficult to dissociate that, but you are the eternal Mamu, always loving, always giving. So.
Well, thank you so much, Arunima, for coming to my podcast. It's really my pleasure, and my audience is going to be delighted to talk to you and listen to your incredible story of success, not only in India but all over the world. Well, let's start with the beginning. When did you start this journey, about Kuchipudi classical dancing, which is spiritual and religious? What drew you into this form of art, and who were the early influencers in your life?
So, as many Indian girls, start learning Indian dance, Indian music, I was also put into Indian dance. I think I started with Kathak, and then it was my mother who saw a Kuchipudi performance and said, whatever this form is, it's very beautiful. Please, you will start going to this class. And I was just taken in awe by my teacher, my first teacher, Padma Bhushan Srimati Swapna Sundari, and started learning from her. And it was just one of the most enriching experiences of my life to just look at this stunning person, and whatever she did just magically kind of was transported to me, and I used the same to express myself. And then within a few years she moved to Goa, and she put me with Padma Shri Guru Jaya Ramarauji and his incredible wife and dancer, Sangeet Narang Academy awardee Srimati Vanashri Raoji. And I think their home, became a temple of learning for me. That is where, I grew up. I learned the art of, dancing, of abhinay, of performing, of makeup. And that is how I started. So these were the early influencers. This is what I started with. Of course, Kuchipudi was not a natural form because I am from North India. So the language in Kuchipudi is Telugu, Sanskrit. But I think, after a point, you reach a point in your dance journey when language is not important. Like you said, it is a very spiritual art form.
Yes.
So it is a dance theater art form. The history is very unique because originally it was only done by men. So men practiced, taught, and performed. Women
Wow.
were not allowed, and they also did the female roles. In fact, Stree Vesham, where men used to dress up and perform as women, is very common in Kuchipudi, unlike other art forms. And it was a Bhagavad Mela tradition. So, large groups of these Brahmin men would come together and perform Kuchipudi as a dance theatre. But at the end of that theatre, the moral or the purpose was always to tell the audience about the victory of good over evil. So whether it was stories from Mahabharata or Ramayana, a lot during the Bhakti movement on Krishna, it was always something positive, right? So that was the purpose of Kuchipudi. And I think over the centuries, it still carries that positivity. It is very vibrant, it is very lyrical, it is, in a way very mysterious. So that is what that is why I've stayed with it,
Wow.
for so many years.
And one of the reasons which, according to me, is also that there was a form of art in your blood. Your dad is a fantastic writer. He's written so many books. His fourth book is on its way. And he wrote that famous
Haseen
Mongeri
Sap-
Lal Ke Haseen Sapne.
Yes.
And your mother also is a director. She's a writer. She came into films also. And your younger sister, again, is a fabulous pianist.
Yes.
And I'm sure you must have seen that. Her show on,
Yes, it was very
Rope,
beautiful. I
she-
told her.
she
Excellent.
came into TrueRotarian
Yes.
Podcast, and it was really a hit. So there was an art in your blood, and there was a right push by your mom to go and learn
Yes.
and go to the temple of music, temple of art,
Yes.
and you were lucky to find some great.
Absolutely. I think
teachers.
everybody in my family, you need that support system. My grandmother used to donate all her lovely silk saris for my costumes, used to buy my jewelry. My mother used to go from class to class, performance to performance, get me ready. Everybody plays a role. And I think even though academics was also very important in our lives, as it is with so many youngsters today, the focus on art, like you said, in my family was always paramount.
Tremendous, yes. And what did classical training teach you, both as an artist and also as an individual?
I think the most important is discipline, right?
Right.
Also, the most beautiful aspect, which I actually hated initially, was that you go every day to class, you sweat, it humbles you. Because there is a strive to perfection, there is a strive to get better. And sometimes there is no purpose. It's the journey is far more valuable than the destination. I think for me as an individual, that is basically the philosophy of my life, the journey.
Wow.
Like you said, the now, the learning now, the humbling. Every time you go, even now, even after all these laurels, I go to practice. I work. It breaks you, breaks your ego every time, and then you rise.
Wow, it's so
So-
wonderful. You have performed in some extraordinary environments in Buckingham Palace in Downing Street, in House of Lords, in Rashtrapati Bhavan, in major museums. How do you see classical dance functioning as cultural diplomacy?
That's a very important point. Classical arts or any form of our culture is soft diplomacy, right? And I mean, I would not even call it diplomacy. It is, I feel, this is ancient wisdom we are bringing to contemporary life. This is of utmost importance today, to maintain, to remain as proud Indians. When I came to this country, I used to work in the corporate sector. I had a very well-paying job, six-figure salary. And then I used to go to museums, I used to go to performances. I never saw good standard of Indian art being presented. I didn't see the pride in children when I went to schools, I mean, they celebrated all festivals, but not Diwali or, Holi. They didn't even know, what it was other than, oh yeah, it's a festival of light. And I felt there is something that needs to be done, right? And so I quit my corporate career, the most risky, decision, and I would say perhaps foolish at that time, because everybody said I was crazy after LSE, St. Stephen's, a banking job. I quit everything and I said, no, I will do this. I will be the ambassador, or I want every child in this country to feel proud if they are Indian. I want every child who is not Indian to look at Indian culture and say, that's brilliant. That is something phenomenal. I want to learn this, or I want to engage with this, or any audience member. It should not be stuck in the past. It should not be that, oh, Indian dance is only performed during Diwali in a temple, or Indian culture is just Bollywood. There is just so much to our culture. There is art, there is music, there is dance. So I wanted that, and I wanted Indian classical dance to be in every venue. Everyone should see it. So I took it to Victoria Albert Museum, British Museum, Trafalgar Square, Tower of London, Buckingham Palace, Downing Street, like where else, and I think it was just that I want the beauty of our art, our culture to be everywhere. Everyone should be able to engage with it and say, that is something phenomenal. Not that it's just, something about like dressing up uniquely and stuck in an Indian area. No, this is like, we in India say Vasudeva Kutumbakam, right? So the whole world is an oyster. For us in Indian art, the whole world is an oyster. So that is diplomacy for me.
Absolutely. And you have done a fantastic job, because things have changed to a very large extent. In today's world, art also sometimes achieve what politics alone cannot do it.
Yes.
It's a communication. It's, letting people know about the culture, heritage, and the kind of legacy that we have adopted from the scriptures, like Mahabharata you mentioned, like, Ramayana you mentioned. It is all through art that you have promoted.
Yes,
It's so wonderful.
Absolutely. But each of these performances or these milestones come after, great amount of resilience. There are like a million no's every time the gate was closed. That this is not the place for Indian dance.
Yeah.
Or what is Kuchipudi? We don't do Kuchipudi. Can you come and do Bollywood? So every time there was a no, there was no funding, there were so many challenges, but you just keep knocking at it, and I think that is also, like I said, discipline. You just go with that purpose, and somewhere I feel Lord Nataraja has blessed.
Yes, absolutely.
So for me, every space, is a temple, right? It is a temple of offering. And that is how I look at it. And very, very important part of this is, to bring your culture alive, to keep it alive within you. Like I asked the parents, if you are proud being Indian, you have to, let your child engage with it.
Yes.
You cannot just shut it because you don't want to, open it up. So I want people to be proud about their identity. I want people to have equal access, to arts.
Yes.
And that is basically, part of the diplomacy.
That's so beautiful. That's so wonderful. You built one of the largest Kuchipudi institutions outside India. What has this journey taught you about institution building in arts?
So, I mean, I didn't start off by thinking I will build an institution. I just quit one fine day and I said, okay, I'm going to give this some time. First perform. And when I perform, I want to perform the best version of my Kuchipudi, right? So I worked really hard on my first show. I watched a lot of shows to see what is it that the audience in Britain wants. Why is Indian dance not programmed at mainstream events? Why do they say go to, just Indian areas and perform it during Diwali? Why is it just a, ritualistic art? Why is it not art for art? So I worked really hard for that. And then, people started coming to me to ask me to teach, and I wasn't ready. So it was an organic process of institution building. But actually, very interestingly, last year I was at a careers fair, And one student, a boy, actually came and said, "What is this dance company and what is the meaning of artistic director?" So I explained it to him. So he said, "Actually, you are a dance startup." And I said, "That is correct." So that's how I now think, right? I'm a startup.
If you think about it, it's a fact.
It's a fact. Exactly. And then he's like, "Can you just retitle, what you've written over here?" And I will say dance startup. So write director, Arunima Kumar dance startup. And you see how many boys come and talk to you.
Wow.
And I said, fine. And I did that. And 40 boys came and spoke to me, right? So
that's brilliant.
Yeah. So he's like, why, if he calls himself an IT startup, why are you calling yourself, this charitable dance company which nobody understands, right?
Yeah. Speak the language.
Absolutely correct. So I'm a dance startup. So
Fantastic.
Yes.
Now, how do children growing up outside India connect with classical heritage, and what do they seek when they walk into a Kuchipudi class?
Yeah, so I wanted every child to fall in love with dance, right?
Yes.
And like I did. So that is how my classes are structured. Even though Indian classical arts are very ancient, the language, the whole, kind of complexity of it, of technique, of body posture, of eye movements, and abhinay is not something that children, especially living abroad, can engage with. In their everyday life, they don't see that at school. They don't see. So I like to simplify it. I break it down, and I also make them fall in love with India. For them, the way I dress up, I wear a bindi, I wear Indian clothes. For them, that is India. And so I want them to be proud of that. I want them to start dressing up like that, but have pride in a dual identity, because they are here. They are Indian and British. And this is a mixed identity.
Yes.
So they should be proud of that mixed identity, and whatever that version of it means to them. So when they come in, we chant mantras, we learn about mudras. They will recite mudras, which are really complex, but they are asked to learn. They can hold the posture well. So some of them learn ballet or gymnastics, and then they can, there are a lot of similarities. And then there are differences, and I tell them what the differences are and how it impacts them. Why it is, it is what it is. Or why Shiva, looks the way he does. Why does he stand on one foot? Because they don't understand it, So it's really breaking it down for them and making them understand. And as I said, in another interview, that, my girls or my students, my young students, in fact, can, sing a Sanskrit shloka with as much pride as they can sing, say, Taylor Swift or Dua Lipa, right?
Wow.
So, that is, I want them to be proud of that, because it has to become relevant to them.
Wow.
It has to be accessible to them.
So you teach them the basics and go deeper into the subject,
yes,
so that they also fall in love with the kind of passion which you have,
yes,
towards this particular dance.
Absolutely. And so many times, their parents tell me, oh, we were sitting, somewhere, and my daughter was reciting the Gayatri Mantra. Even I don't know the Gayatri Mantra, they'll say that, right? And I said, well, of course, and they feel so, proud, and, and it builds the family together.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Arunima, one of the most inspiring aspect of your work is community outreach. You have performed in Tihar Jail. You have got blind musicians, elderly groups, that is on your list where you have performed, disability centers. And what inspired this path, apart from teaching and performing? There is, like they say in Rotary, you give it back to the society. This is also what you have performed in underprivileged members of a society. This is also a kind of a social work that we have done. What started this particular journey?
So, as my father, right, he is a retired police officer, and all our lives growing up, we saw him serve the country. He was always busy, he was always working. It was, a seva. It was a seva to the country. And we sacrificed our time, but we knew what it was for. So I think seva, or that sense of service, is inbuilt in us, And I think that's where it comes from. The second thing is that how did it start in dance? So, of course, I started working in inclusive arts even when it was not, say, a thing. It was not fashionable, diversity, inclusion, it's a word now. But when I started off with it, there was nothing like that, right? You just performed on a stage. But when it was actually also a project which I did with a French choreographer called Jerome Bell. And his piece is called Gala, and it's quite a revolutionary piece where he just brings in dancers from all genres and presents a program. And that program humbles every single artist in a way that you have never experienced before, because it breaks down your perceptions. Like there was a wheelchair, there was a dancer on a wheelchair, there was a person who used to dance but was suffering from cancer. So there were many people in that group. And and there was a ballet dancer. I was the only Indian dancer, and then he would give us tasks. The same task applied to everybody, right? So some tasks were very easy for us because we were trained classical dancers, but some tasks were really difficult for us. For example, somersault. I have never done a somersault on a stage in my life. And I would say, oh my God, if I can't do it, then how is this poor wheelchair dancer going to do it? The wheelchair dancer was phenomenal.
Wow.
A hip hop dancer was phenomenal, but we don't know how to do it. So that really broke down my perception about how you perceive somebody else. Why pity somebody else if they have a disability? Because they have something so unique to offer that sometimes even you don't, right? When I worked with the visually impaired musicians, like in the morning, one of them asked me, Arunima, you're not well? And I said, my own team has not asked me that question. How do you know? But their sense of perception is so strong because, that is how they are trained, right? Just from my voice, he could understand I am not well. But my team who's been working with me for 2 days did not realize I had fever, right? So I think it's just working through these situations, you realize how to appreciate everybody and treat everybody equally. And I said, okay, if that's how I feel, I want my art to go everywhere, to go to them. I want them to engage with my art. Why somebody in a prison should not dance, right? Why somebody in a care home should not dance?
Yes.
Why somebody without vision, should not dance? So in fact, we created this project with under Baluji Srivastava, who's OB, very well recognized sitarist in London. His piece was called Antardrishti. It was staged at Royal Festival Hall. And I started that and the only people who could see were the dancers. So I had 4 dancers. I choreographed the piece. So I started the piece in darkness at Royal Festival Hall because I said every audience member should understand what it's like to not have vision.
Wow.
Right? And only the musicians played. And then slowly we brought in shadows and then we brought in the dancers. So it's like, then you really appreciate, right? When you understand what it's like.
Yes.
So those are the kind of things that I work with to make everybody realize, and appreciate each other. So that we can live in a more humanitarian society. Right now our society is running towards material wealth.
Yes.
More and more and more. Asset after asset after asset. Money after money. We are just measuring ourselves on money.
Money part. That's
and
right.
assets, right? Where is your spiritual health? Where is your spiritual wealth? So for me, that's my wealth.
So the Sanatani, we are all Sanatanis, right? We are the born givers. So that Sanatani aspect in you came out to help people who were born or had some problem in their lives. You also sort of, as a true Sanatani, wanted to give them happiness.
Give everybody. I think we have some visual or visible measures of disability, right? However, we all might have some hidden disability. We might all have some hidden truths inside of us which are our disability, which hold us back. What is a disability? It holds you back.
That's right.
It makes you, it does not enable you to do something. We all have it.
Yes.
Visual or internal. We might not see it. In some cases we see it.
In some cases,
we don't.
Somebody else sees it.
Yes, even if you have like 50 houses and 20,000 cars, you might have something inside you.
That's right.
So it's for everyone to engage in spiritual wealth.
Yes.
Rest will all fade away.
Right. Can art rehabilitate? What have you personally witnessed dealing with, you know, at various places
Yeah,
that you have
absolutely.
performed?
Absolutely. Art can heal, and art is the single most, I would say, the best tool to heal, the best tool to stay healthy and well, and young, I would also say, right? Young again, spiritually, right? No, all these creams and all will come and go, but actually, if you are happy and healthy from inside, that's what you need.
Absolutely.
But so many, like when I'm unhappy, I dance, right? When I'm in doubt, I dance. So if I have felt the power of dance, I have seen, in many examples, like I was performing in Australia once, and one audience member, he said, I have followed you for 4 performances. The first one, my friend forced me to come because he had bought 2 tickets and we thought it's a Bollywood show. We didn't know it's a classical show, but when we came inside, we realized it's not Bollywood, the music is different. But I sat through it, and then what I felt, I have never felt before. I'm a drug addict, right? So I cannot live without drugs. But that performance moved me. So I have traveled and watched 4 of your shows at different locations. Every time I have felt at peace, and I have not taken drugs for 2 weeks.
Wow.
So I didn't know him, right? He's just a person who's come and but that really moved me, right?
Moves you. Yeah.
And so many times when we go to the prison, right? I went to the prison, in fact, and we were working with so many women inmates, and I was teaching them dance, and and their experiences, what they said, that Didi, you come, and just the fact that we can come and hold a mudra, or even stand, straight and feel confident and beautiful is enough.
Yes.
And then we we had this path breaking moment where we were allowed to take them outside the prison, and they danced at Habitat Center with 200 policemen surrounding, so that not like so that no one could escape. But again, the inmates said, Didi, today we are just getting ready and we are dancing. That's enough freedom for us.
Wonderful.
So there are so many such moments that you have. And like I said, it's in my spiritual bank account. Because the other side of dance is that, yes, we need to make the startup sustainable and, fundraise professionally. People who have the means should invest in arts.
Absolutely.
Should promote the arts. But there is so much that arts can do for us, which even we don't know, because I guess the perception of Indian classical arts is that it's difficult to understand, it's boring. I'd rather watch, a movie instead, or watch a pop concert instead, or Bollywood instead, because it is relatable. But actually, if you stay with it, what it will give you, nothing else will give you.
Absolutely. Now, coming back to the other aspect of your life, you have worked on themes such as gender, domestic violence, women's identity. What does dance allow you to express about these issues?
So living in Britain, I think that was, one great opportunity for me to watch a lot of art and to also find freedom in my art. So whenever I felt very strongly about a topic, I created work to, ask my audiences, to have a conversation with my audiences. So, for example, my work with, the work I created on Sati, which is the, widow burning practice that we used to exist in India, right? And then I read an article that it still existed in some parts, of India, and it was, recently done. And so I could not understand how somebody could do that, right? And so I worked with an opera singer, and because opera has that, that really strong, aggressive, shrill, voice. So I kind of pictured, feeling what that woman could feel if she's being burnt for no reason, right, other than her husband has passed away. So I created that piece because I wanted my audience to have that moment, to understand what it's like. right? And I saw a picture of Sati in a hotel. I will not name the hotel in Delhi, in its main lobby, and glorifying it, and I just could not understand or accept it. So I created this piece, and people were like, oh my god, we couldn't sleep all night, after seeing your piece. It was so powerful but so intense, Arunima.
Wow.
And I said, yes, you're just watching a piece. Imagine what that woman went through.
Yes.
Right. So that's what inspires me. Like even my piece called Bandini, which is based on a story of a woman in Tihar who actually belonged to a very affluent family. And when I used to work with her, very calm, very educated, very, very dignified woman, but she was a victim of domestic violence.
Oh.
And she murdered her husband because she couldn't take it. And I felt really, bad for her and sorry for her. And she said, no, I'm free. But so many women, outside these walls of the prisons are not free. They are suffering every day, but I'm inside a prison, but I'm free.
Wow.
And that really, again, shook me. And I thought, look, as women, we have walls around us, right? We are constantly imprisoned by so many things. May not be as drastic as domestic violence, but our dreams or our thoughts or our choices, sometimes we are imprisoned, right?
It is very profound.
Yeah. So I created the piece called Bandini. Who is a prisoner? Do I need a physical cage, or do I actually have a cage, right? Can I free myself? So that's what and that was done with a Japanese drummer, because again, I love working with different sounds, different genres. Like being in London, that is paradise. You get the best artists of the world. You just see something. I saw a samurai drummer and I was like, that's the sound I want, for my piece, Bandini. And so that's how I create, because it's just like every time something affects me, I create. I also create a lot of classical works. I created a piece called Stri, which is again on women, on, how we classify women, Rati, Sita, Sati, the beautiful one, Rati, who's, Kama's consort, Lord Kama's consort, beautiful, desirable. You want to think about a woman like that. Sita, a good wife. You want to have a woman like that, right? Sati, right, who will do anything for her husband. But then, who do you want this woman to be?
Incredible.
So that is these are the kind of things I do. And then, like you said, on gender diversity, I was very fortunate to work with a male artist here who I trained to perform Strivesham. So he dressed up as a woman and performed Bhama Kalapam like we do in Kuchipudi in the olden times. So also reviving some of those old ritualistic traditions which are perhaps fading out. So
wonderful.
Anything that affects me, or inspires me, I feel like, okay, I should create something. And the great thing about London audience is they come, they watch you, they engage, they write feedback for you. It's not people who just come because, they know my dad or they know my
or
mom.
It's fashionable.
Or it's fashionable, right? They come because they love it, they want to come. They ask you, what are you doing next? They don't like it, they will tell you.
Why
right?
They don't like it.
They will pay for the ticket to watch you. And I think it's a beautiful relationship with a space, with a universe you don't know. Like, I don't know who they are or what they do, right? But they write, they engage. And I think so you have a sense of responsibility.
Yes, absolutely.
To create the best.
Absolutely. You see, we are coming on the same note. It just struck me. We are only 9 months old. And, you will be surprised, we have over 7 million views already.
Wow.
And we probably today must have crossed 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. Or we're going to do it tomorrow. Something like that. And when I think like the way you were thinking, I don't know them.
Yeah.
That means they appreciate the work that is being done in giving back to the society. That's why, the subscription is growing, the viewership is growing.
And also that you are so authentic to what you're doing, right? You are feeling responsible. They want to watch. I want to give them good stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I must say thank you so much for helping True Rotarian to reach this particular milestone. And if you like the show, if you like our programs, please do like, subscribe, and share the videos. And coming back to Arunima again, India has so many powerful women artists. How do you view the role of women leaders in shaping the future of Indian classical art form?
So you're talking about just Indian classical art leaders,
Yes.
or Indian leaders and women leaders in general?
Indian classical art form.
Of course, I think women are playing an integral role in every aspect, of life, right? Whether it is industry, whether it is arts, whether it is, at home. And I think the women leaders will continue to influence Indian classical arts. I think we just need to, like I started rethinking the work I do as a dance startup, right? We need to think about ways of making it sustainable. We need to find ways of making it accessible so that it reaches outside of where we are traditionally engaging it with, and also collaborate. I think the openness to collaborate, the openness to create outside of the self is very important, because of course solo arts are very, very prominent in our classical art forms, right? And you spend hours in a solo performance. You spend hours to just get into the mood of creating, right? When we start creating performances traditionally, an hour means nothing, whereas today's audience has a 2 minute attention span. Like now, when I'm sometimes invited to shows, they're like, "You have 5 minutes, Arunimaji, for the performance." I'm like, "What will I do in 5 minutes?" But every artist has 5 minutes, right, in that show. So either I take it or I leave it, right? So how am I going to engage with these
And
changing times?
communicate in those
Yeah.
5 minutes.
And also, I have to accept this is what it is, right? Like tomorrow, I have AI hitting me. I have so many disruptors hitting me, right? So, how am I going to keep my art authentic? How am I going to keep it engaging and accessible? And how am I going to really continue this penetration? Because what I really want is people to understand my art and to appreciate my art. So, that is how women leaders will need to think. And that is a new wave coming our way. And I think that we can really, we are at the cusp. India is shining in every field. We need to lift culture, we need to lift Indian classical arts, and we need to take it to the other side.
Absolutely. Kuchipudi is rooted in ancient tradition, yet you have successfully positioned it for global audience. How do you see the future of Indian classical art in the next decade? Considering that you just mentioned that there is AI coming,
Yeah.
there is attention, this thing, uh, and you have already started working on it.
Yes.
How do you see it 10 years from now?
I don't know about 10 years from now, but I think this is, like I said, this is really a very unique period for Indian classical arts, because we have ancient wisdom with us, right? Our content is very strong. We just, as I said, need to position it for the future. I think everywhere, we have seen a revolution, we have seen a marked change. This is also waiting to happen. Like I keep saying, Indian classical dance is like yoga waiting to happen, right? And that's what I want. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to do. I want to be a game changer for Indian classical dance, because I believe in it. Of course, I have a corporate strategic experience which positions me and enables me to think like that, but I also believe in the depth of this ancient wisdom. Yesterday, I went to there was a health and happiness summit at Imperial College, and there was a Tai Chi class, and the way they positioned Tai Chi, there were hundreds of people waiting in line to go and experience Tai Chi. Why can't we have that for Indian dance? Why is Indian dance just Bollywood? I don't have a problem with Bollywood. I love Bollywood. I would dance all night. But Indian classical dance has so much science, so much power. So that is what I'm doing next. that I need, to the world to understand what Indian dance is. And, in its true sense, in its authentic sense, in its scientific sense, and as a contributor to health and well-being. So that is where I'm working towards. Second, as I said, we can't think technology is not going to hit us. It's hitting us every day. Every second person I see is like putting themselves up on YouTube, showing, some kind of Indian dance. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good. Or sometimes learned, sometimes unlearned. But they're engaging with it. So it's a good sign, right? I feel that if, again, we can really utilize this wave in the right way, then, we have a huge market in the future. The youth of today, they are engaging with bhajans. They are engaging with a lot of...
Yeah, that's a new wave.
Yeah, they're engaging with Ayurveda.
Yes.
So, Indian dance. So, I feel there is a lot of scope if we think about it like that.
And we also sort of, like you say, we are modifying our expressions in the time frame that is required.
Yeah.
If you are to communicate with your audience in, say, 40 minutes, if you are given a 5-minute or 10-minute slot, you want to innovate, you want to communicate, and you are improving that.
Exactly.
It's so wonderful. And finally, what message would you like to give to the young artists and global Indian community?
I would just say the message to Indian, message to everybody is, I would say, go dance. Have the best time of your life, and the best time of your life is when you dance, because you really look at your body in, the most beautiful way. And whether you're a, man or a woman, girl or a boy, grandfather or a grandmother, little child, anybody, I think it's basic human nature to just dance. So I would just say engage with dance, and just like turmeric latte and yoga are where they are, Indian dance is really going to be, a significant contributor to, your health and happiness in the future. So, go for a dance class.
Wow, fantastic. What I was thinking, whenever you come to India, I've had a podcast with your sister, right now we're talking to each other. I think whenever you come to India, let Anku play, you dance, and I will sing a thumri for you.
Arey wow, lovely. Why don't you sing it now? And I will dance.
Arunima, thank you so much for sharing your journey and for carrying Indian culture to the world with such a dignity and excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, please like and subscribe our show. And if you like our today's program, please also get in touch with Arunima if you want to have your children learn from her.
Yes, and I would just say that I have, you can see our website, akdc.co. You can connect with us on Instagram at arunima.kumar or Arunima Kumar Dance Co. and on Facebook. And we do classes online as well as in person, of course in London, but online for everywhere in the world. So join us and join the journey.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do? I'm going to put the entire biodata in the description box, giving all the information. So please free to see the biodata and get in touch with Arunima.
Yeah, and whatever your age, whether you're 4 or you're, 104, you can join us. That's what we have. Our oldest person is 104. Our youngest person is 4. So whatever your age, whatever your ability, if you want to dance, come join us.
Excellent. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day and Jai Hind.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Arunima.
you. Thank you.